Okay, I'm going to show you a how to make another hoodic, but I'm going to show you how to add a lace trim around the hood itself and how to do a lace trim where I did a seed stitch on the other one. And we're going to do this a little differently because, as I always say, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And so we're going to do this one a little differently. We're going to start off with the hood. You got to get the hood done before you can start on the neck. Okay. So what I've done is just an E-wrap cast on, nothing special. And I did a knit row back. Okay, so my starting points here. So E-wrap cast on and then knit back, and it's flat. All 70 pegs. Okay, so I'm using the 70 peg. Alright, and what I'm doing is the first 5 stitches on each side is a seed stitch, okay? And then the rest is knit. Alright, and what I'm doing is going back and forth, and I'm using a little bulkier of a yarn than I did initially. I'm using I believe a 6 rather than a 4. And so that's going to cut it down to where it's not 90 rows, it's 74. 74 rows. And to get the same amount. If you want to do the 90, you can, but it's going to take more yarn if you're doing the bulky stuff. Okay, but if you want to do this in a more delicate yarn, you can. You just follow the same number of rows as my other Hoodic pattern, and so if you want to do this with a more delicate yarn, you can, and you can use a worsted, and you'll do 90 instead of 74 rows. Okay, so E-wrap cast on and do a single row of knit, and then what you're going to do is you're going to slip that first stitch. Always make sure you're slipping when you start the row for your first stitch. And the reason being is we're going to be working a lace strip separate, and you want to be able to add a chain on to work. It's going to be modular, even more modular. You're going to modularly add the lace edging that I have in mind, and so you want to slip that edge, and that will give you the chain that you need in order to be able to easily add on and keep working. Okay, and then once you get past your first 5, then you're going to just knit your way over. So that was a slip 1, purl knit, and then knit all the way around to your other stitch marker. Okay, we're at our stitch marker, and what you want to do is you want to knit 1. Oops, I'm used to doing this on my lap, so this is a little unusual. Purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit. Remember to slip that first stitch, and remember we're doing a seed stitch, and so we finished with a purl, and we know we need to start with a knit. So knit, purl, knit, purl. Then you're going to knit all the way around, and then set up to do your last 5 stitches for your seed stitch, and then you're going to repeat these 2 rows until you have your total of either 74 or 90, depending on whatever you are choosing to do. Okay, so knit your way around. Okay, and we're around to the other side, so we're going to purl, knit, purl, knit, and knit. Okay, you are going to pause the video and complete those last 2 rows, total of 74 to 90 times depending on the yarn you're using. If you want to do 90, you'll need more than I got 2 skeins of the pink and the Lions brand, and 1 in white for the trim, the lace trim. So that's what I've got, and as you can see, my chains are starting to line up, so it'll be easier for me to go in and do my lace trim. So go ahead, pause the video, complete your rows, and when we get back, what we'll do is you can either choose to bind off and sew up, or you can do a Kitchener cast off where you move half the stitches to the other half and Kitchener, and that way you have a seamless look. Depends on what you want to do. Because you're going to add lace around the face, it's going to kind of quit that sinking it wants to do at the face when you do a seam. So there's a reason why I tend to do a Kitchener of some sort at the top of the head, because it will have a dip to it that I don't particularly care for. So go ahead and complete your rows. We'll come back and I'll show you the next step. Okay, you should have finished actually knitting your hood, and this is what it should look like at this point. And at this point, what you want to do is you want to do a regular normal bind off. I wouldn't suggest being real tight with it, kind of be loose with it. So you just want to bind off all the way around and kind of be loose with it. If it's too tight, then it won't blend in with the top. But yeah, just a normal bind off, knit, take it back 1, toss the bottom loop over, move it over 1. I decided to just kind of keep it simple with this pattern because you shouldn't have too much of a weight at the top, and that should be a little different than normal because you'll be adding a lace trim to it, so that should really fix that seam heaviness. So do that all the way around, and when you're done and ready, you're going to sew the top, and you should have a chain that you're working with, and what you want to do is you want to pull from the outer edge of the chain rather than from the inner side of the hood. You want to send it through the outer side of the chain so that you have a really smooth top, and you want to see how I'm pushing it through the outer side of the chain, and I'm working it from the positive side of the hood. And then you want to stretch it out as you go so you don't have too tight of a seam. That's the other thing you don't want too much of, is too tight of a seam. But you're wanting to put the needle through the outer side of the chain, and you want to do that all the way across. As you can see, there is that, and you'll see that I've already started working the lace, but it's okay, it's a heavy repeat, okay? And your beginning is you're going to E-wrap cast on 4 pegs, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're going to add your first chain stitch on, and you're going to knit those 2 together and knit your way over, and then you're going to slip that first stitch and knit your way back. And at this point, then you're going to do a 4-row repeat, and I'll explain how that happens. You're going to do it all the way across, and you're going to be picking up the chains from one side, and I've been choosing the positive side. So let me explain how you do these 4 rows. So this will be the first row, and what you want to do is you want to slip that first stitch, you want to decrease over 1, yarn over, knit 2 together, then you're going to E-wrap chain 4. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then you're going to slip that first stitch and you're going to purl 2. So here's 1 and 2, and then you're going to pull up a chain, and I'm pulling from, and you see all these chains, I'm pulling from the positive side. Okay, I'm pulling from the positive side and placing it on the loom, and you see the chains. And then what I do is purl the 2 stitches together, and that keeps you from having a ridge around the face. Okay, so here's your next 2 rows. So you're going to knit, slip that first stitch, and you're going to knit 3, 2, 3. Then you're going to slip that end stitch, you're going to purl 2, 1 and 2, and then you're going to pull up another chain. You're going to pull from the same side every time, and I'm choosing to pull from the positive side. Alright, and you're going to purl those 2 together. Now that is your 4-row repeat. I'm going to show it to you one more time, and then you're just going to go over and over and over again until you get the whole face. Okay, so your first step is to slip that first stitch, decrease over 1, then you're going to yarn over, and then you're going to knit those 2 stitches together, and then you're going to E-wrap chain that last peg 4 times. So here's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then you're going to slip that first stitch, you're going to purl 2, 1 and 2. This is your second row that you're working. You're going to pull up your chain, place it onto the loom, and then you're going to purl 2 together. Okay, and you're going to do 2 more rows. You're going to knit 3, slip that first stitch, knit 3, 1, 2, and 3. Then you're going to slip that end stitch, you're going to purl 2, and here's 1, and here's 2. Then you're going to pull up, and I'm pulling up my last chain, and be ready to bind off. Okay, and that last chain may give you troubles to find, but you'll find it. You're going to put that on there, and then you purl the 2 together, and then I'm going to show you how to finish it up. But you're going to do this all the way across. You're going to do the 4-row repeat all the way across, and then I'll show you how to finish. And you're just going to do a normal bind off where you knit, move back 1, toss the bottom loop over. Do this loosely because you're going to have to add these back to the loom. Okay, so you're just going to bind off like you normally would. Okay, after you do the whole face area, and it's a 4-row repeat, so it's not too bad. So there you have that. And you'll have 3 easy stitches you'll be able to see, and you're going to be adding all these stitches at the back to the loom. Okay. So we're done with the large loom at this point, and you'll see there's 3 chains there. And E-wrap cast on I love using because it's easy to see your loops to add back. But there is your hood, and it's completed now. And now it's time to add it to the smaller 54 peg loom. And you're going to be adding chains that you made on the white, and then your E-wrap cast on loops. And as you can see, it's nice and smooth on both sides. And so go ahead and pause the video, complete your lace, and then we will go about adding it to this loom. You should have finished your hood, and now it's time to add this to the loom. And we're going to add it normally without the positive side facing in, and we're going to be doing the positive side facing out. Okay, and because finding the fourth stitch on your white is going to be a little difficult, you're just going to start and you're going to put 2 white stitches on the first peg. Okay, so you put your 2 first white stitches on your first peg, and then your second peg is going to be a white stitch and a pink stitch. So there's your white stitch. And these are going to be a little bit more difficult to put on, but once you start working with the pink, then it's really easy. And then a pink stitch you will add to that one. Okay. And at this point you're going to start adding your cast on loops for your E-route cast on loops, and you're going to do that for 16 pegs. Okay. You're going to go and you're going to do that for 16. Just pick them up and put them on, and the E-wrap cast on makes that kind of easy to do that, to just add them in. So you see there's 2 there, and then I'm adding singles, and you want to just continue to do that for the next 16 pegs. Okay, at this point you're going to start adding 2 stitches to a single peg for 16 pegs, and the reason being is that's your difference in your 70 and 54 is 16, and at the beginning I adjusted for the addition of the white lace, but you're going to do 16 pegs with 2 stitches. And now you may recall on my red one that I did 3 stitches for 8 pegs, and because we will have these stitches be sitting on here for a total of, well, around 20 rows where we're not touching them and we don't need that much bulk to try to work around, I decided to spread it out a little bit more, and so it's going to be 2 stitches for 16 total pegs, and you'll have a little fun, and then when you get back to the singles it'll go really fast, so it'll be a little trick getting the 2 on there, but this is a little different. As I said, there's multiple ways of doing this. This is another alternative on how to go about making a hoodic. You can put the hood on first, then do your multiple rows, and you don't have to worry about that you're working in the negative for the turtleneck area. And so that's the reason why I'm doing the hood first and putting it on the peg on the loom first, and then I'm going to work my turtleneck rows, not touch these stitches until I'm ready, and then add them in, and that will allow, see, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11, okay, and by doing that, that will allow for you to not have to worry about positives and negatives like on the original video that I did. So kind of important there. And so we've just spread out our gather section here over 16 pegs rather than 8, Again, you can do this whole pattern in worsted yarn, but just remember your hood's going to be a little longer and your turtleneck will probably be 20 rows rather than 15 after you do the lace casting on and doing the first few rows of lace. So it'll vary a little if you're using worsted yarn, but not by much. So and take into consideration, you can do this pattern without the hood and make a really nice, elegant kind of turtleneck collar that's very Victorian. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and I did an extra. Okay. And at this point, you'll start adding your singles back in, which goes pretty quick at this point. So you add your singles back in until you get to the last 2 pegs. Okay, and then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to add 2 stitches to each of those last 2 pegs. So what you're going to do is you're going to go in and you're going to continue adding single stitches in until the last 2 pegs of the loom. Okay, we're working towards the last 2 pegs of loom, and you're going to have 1 pink stitch and 1 white stitch, just like on the other side, and then your last peg will have 2 white stitches. And if you have a hard time seeing it, just add it the best you can. That's the reason why there's only 3 stitches that I say work with on the white. Okay, you have now officially added your hood to the loom. And at this point you're going to be ready to go in and do that. So you're ready to go in and add the turtleneck area. Okay, we're ready to start on the turtleneck area. We're not going to touch these. Don't touch it by any means. Do not touch these stitches, because if you do, you'll ruin the whole hoodic. Okay, so we're going to start off with the white, and we're going to start off with the lace trim that'll be around the top of the neck. And you're going to do a lace cast on where you E-wrap chain 4 to start. So here's 3. And here's 4. Okay, and then I take that stitch and I move it over to the next peg. Then I pull up the original loop that I made and put it on the first peg. Okay, and again, this is a lace cast on. You can do more chains if you'd like, but I only did 4. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, you're going to take and move that over 1. Then you're going to find your original stitch, and you'll see it, and you'll want to put it back on the peg with the empty one. Okay, and you're going to do this all the way around. So you're going to E-wrap chain 4. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're going to move that stitch over 1 peg. Then you're going to go at the base and find your first stitch you made, and then you're going to pull it back onto the loom. And this creates a little kind of loop-de-loop at the edge of your turtleneck at the top, and it adds more of a delicate appeal to it. But I call this the lace cast on, and what it is, it's a E-wrap chain 4 times, move it over, add the original stitch to the empty peg. So you should have some loop-de-loops starting to develop, and you're going to want to do this all the way around. Okay. And I always like to stretch my stitches out, but you should have a lacing that you're developing. So I'm going to show you again. We're going to E-wrap chain 4, so there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Move that stitch over 1, find your original stitch and place it onto the empty peg. Alright, and there's your next loop-de-loop. You're going to do that all the way around, and remember to not touch those base stitches that you added that hood. Alright, we've completed that. Okay, and now what we want to do is we want to knit all the way around, but we're not going to touch those base stitches again, because if you touch them you will mess up the whole hoodic. Alright, so I'll tell you when to touch those stitches. So what you want to do is you want to knit all the way around like normal. Okay, so just knit all the way and don't touch those base stitches that are from the hood. Remember that. Then you want to purl all the way around. Remember not to touch those base stitches again. So purl all the way around. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to create the lacing that's around the face, but we're trying to create it around the top of the turtleneck. And so instead of working it in short rows, we're working it in longer rows. So go ahead and pause the video, get that all the way done. Now we're going to start our decrease. So you're going to move that over 1 peg, then you're going to yarn over, and then you're going to knit 2 together. Again, what we're trying to do is create the lacing like we did on the side all the way around in long rows rather than short rows. And what you're doing here as your repeat is you're decreasing, yarn over, and knitting 2 together. Alright, so remember, don't touch those base stitches. Decrease, yarn over, knit 2 together. And you're going to do this all the way around the loom, making sure that you don't touch those hood stitches you put on originally until I tell you. Alright, as I said, we're going to be doing like 20 something rows before we even mess with those stitches. Okay, so decrease, yarn over, knit 2 together. You want to do this all the way around, so go ahead and pause the video and get that much done, and then I'll show you the next row. Now that you have that done, what you want to do is you want to purl all the way around, okay, and making sure you don't touch those base stitches again. Alright, we're not ready for those until we get a bit of a turtleneck made up, so go ahead and you want to purl all the way around. So you'll want to pause the video and complete your purled row all the way around, and then you'll have one more row, and then we'll be switching colors. Don't touch those base pegs all the way around. Okay, now we're ready to go in and do our last row before we change our color. But as you can see, we've about created what we need to look similar to the place around the face, and all you're going to do for your last lace row is knit all the way around, making sure not to touch those base stitches again. So just knit all the way around. So go ahead and pause the video, knit all the way around, and then I'll show you how to change colors. Okay, we're ready to change colors. I've already snipped my end, giving myself a little extra space. And I'm going to do what they call a fisherman's knot or a magic knot. And it's where you do a half hitch, and then you do another half hitch, with the other side, the other color, and then you can pull them together, and their resistance keeps the knots from coming undone. But if you want it to be really close to the base of what you're doing, which I will take the white off again, you'll want to get that pink as tight to the base as possible. And then what you want to do is you want to half hitch that white as close to the base. You want to tighten that half hitch as close to the base of the peg as possible. So there's my half hitch that I'm making, and then I'm going to pull it as far to the base as possible, and then I'm going to pull it out. Alright, and that gets the color change really close, really smooth. You don't have a whole lot of ends to weave in and that kind of thing, so it's really smooth. And what I do is I like to go back and loosen up those stitches that I tightened, and that way it's a perfect color change. Okay, now that's personally how I do it. Magic knot, a fisherman's knot, however you want to choose to do it. Okay, we're going to do a 3-peg rib stitch. So what that means is we're going to knit 2 and purl 1. We're going to do that all the way around, making sure we don't touch those base stitches again from the hood. So knit 2, purl 1, and you're going to do that all the way around, and you're going to do that for 15 rows. Alright, making sure you don't touch those base stitches for the hood. Okay, so knit 2, purl 1. Alright, and you're going to do that all the way around, and you're going to do it for a total of 15 rows. Alright, and so pause the video and get that much done. Okay, we've completed our 15 rows, and we have our turtleneck, and now we're ready to add in our hood. And you can see the lace. It looks very similar to the stuff around the face. Alright, so shove that back up in there. And what you want to do now is we're now finally adding in the hood, alright? And you're going to continue with that knit 2, purl 2, alright? But you're adding in. So the first is going to be knit 3 together, okay? And the next one's going to be knit 3 together. And then on the pattern it'll say 2 times. And then you're going to purl 2 together. Alright. Now you're going to continue your pattern. You're going to knit 2 together 2 times, and then you're going to purl 2 together 1 time. So here's your knit 2 together, and then your purl 2 together. Alright, so knit 2 together 2 times, so here's 1, and here's 2, and then you're going to purl 2 together just 1 time. You're going to continue your rib stitch that you've been doing. Knit 2 together 2 times, so here's 1, and then purl 2 together 1 time. There we go. And you're going to do that all the way over until you reach those 3 stitches on there, and you're going to continue that. But instead you're going to be knitting 3 together 2 times, and then purling 3 together, and you're going to continue that. So you want to do that all the way around, and that adds your hood in, and there's no seaming involved. I love that personally. And to think this point is pretty much you're more than halfway done. Okay, so at this point we're knitting 3 together 2 times, so here's our second time. And then we're going to purl 3 together. And here's how I like to do it. I like to send the working yarn up through all 3 of the stitches, make a large loop, push it to the middle, and then toss the 3 loops over, okay, because it can be a little troublesome with the 3 loops to purl. So I toss all 3 loops over, then I pick up that loop I just made, put it back on the peg, and snug it up. Then we're going to knit 3 together 2 times. So here's 1, and here's 2, and then we're going to purl 3 together. Remember, I make a big loop, put it to the middle, toss the 3 loops over the peg. Then I pick up my loop that I made, put it on the loom, and then tighten up. Remember, you're keeping up with the knit 2, purl 1 ribbing that you've been doing. And you want the rib stitch. If you don't do the rib stitch, you won't get the nice clean turtleneck feel that you get. Okay, so the rib stitch is kind of like a have to, but there's different rib stitches you can use. Just as long as you use a rib stitch, it'll work out great. Okay, so if you're wanting to do kind of a variation on this pattern, you just need some sort of rib stitch. And I've seen plenty of variations on the rib stitch. Okay, we're back to 2. So here's our purl, and now we're going to knit 2, purl 2 to the other side of until we're back to our starting point, and then you're going to do the knit 3 together and then purl 3 together. Okay, we've finished adding our hood in, as you can see, and now we're ready to start working the other half of the Hoodic. And at this point, you're going to go back to your rib stitch for 2 rows. You're going to knit 2, purl 1 all the way around for 2 rows. So knit 2, purl 1 all the way around for 2 rows, and we'll come back. Okay, at this point you're going to count over 14 and put a stitch marker, count over 14 from the starting point, count over 14 from the last peg, and put a stitch marker. And this is what we're trying to work towards. So what you want to do is you want to knit 2, purl 1, and you want to work your way over to your stitch marker. And what you're doing is you're fixing to give yourself a new starting point, and you're going to be decreasing. And this isn't going to be as fancy of decreasing because you're working the positive side. So basically, for the most part, when you're decreasing, you're just going to be knitting 2 together. Unless you decrease onto a purl, then you'll purl 2 together. But for the most part, there's nothing really fancy that is being done. So we are here at our new starting point, okay, and we're going to be working between the 2 stitch markers. So here and here is where we're working back and forth to, and we're always going to slip the first stitch when we start a row, and we're always going to make sure that we knit that last stitch in each row. Alright, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to achieve a chain so that when we go to do our lace trim around the bottom, you have a chain to work off of, like doing a 10 stitch blanket, okay? So work like you normally would, and if you get confused as to what you're supposed to be doing, you're going to work your way around doing the knit 2, purl 2, and if you get confused, it'll tell you on the inside of the loom which one's the purl, and it's going to look like a knit column, okay? So you're going to knit 2, purl 2 all the way around to the other side, alright, and you're going to keep up with where your purls are. And your purls are easy to see. They look like a row. They look like a column of knit stitches, and that's actually a purl. All right, so you want to keep up with what your knits and purls are, and you want to keep up with it the whole time when you're decreasing and everything. And I think it's fairly easy because you have 2 knits and 1 purl, and your single purl shows up really, really nicely with this yarn, but you want to make sure that you keep up with your knits and your purls to do this rib stitch, alright? So you want to work your way all the way around, and then you're going to end up working your way all the way back. Okay. We're here at our last, and we knitted our last. And we're going to slip that first one. Remember, you're going to slip your ends when you're starting the row. So you're going to start with a purl after you slip, and then you're going to do knit 2, purl 1 all the way over to the other side. Okay. Okay, so now you're ready for a decrease, and you're going to decrease over to the left by 1, and you're going to be slipping that first stitch. So you're going to be skipping that first stitch, and then you're going to move it over, because what you want to do is you want to keep that chain available, that chain look going down the side, so that when you go to add in the lace trim around the neckline, it'll work up easier. So once you move that, then if you run into a purl, you're going to purl the 2 together. So if you are decreasing onto a purl, then you'll purl the 2 together. If you're decreasing onto a knit, you'll knit the 2 together. So just kind of keep that in mind. And then knit 2, purl 1 all the way around until you get to just before the last 3 stitches, and then we'll work from there. Now remember, there is an oddball in here because it did not work up evenly with 3. You do a single purl there. Okay. No, that's on another one I'm planning on working on, sorry. Alright, so we do the single purl when the knit 2, and you do it all the way around, and then you'll stop just before the last 3 stitches. And this is going to work the same. You're just going to kind of continue to work the rib stitch over and back until you have the amount that you need decreased down to, and then so you'll stop here, you'll decrease over, so you'll skip that first peg, decrease over, move that last stitch over, then you'll knit the 2 together because we landed on a knit, so you'll knit the 2 together, and then you'll knit the last stitch. Okay, again, we're trying to keep the chain, and you always want to knit that last stitch when you're working back. Alright, so now you're going to work back and forth, and you're going to continue this. So you're going to do 3 rows in between your decreases. Alright, so you're slipping that first stitch, and you're going to be doing 3 rows in between your decreases. So you're going to go back, this will be a 1, and then you're going to go forward again, that'll be 2, and then back again, that'll be 3. You want to be starting your decreasing on the same side every time. Okay, so you'll do 3 rows in between your decreases, and then you will decrease. 3 rows, and then decrease on the 4th row. 3 rows, and then decrease on the 4th row. So that is how you're going about the front. The back will decrease faster, like it is on the original Hoodic pattern that I do, and I'll be showing you how to do that because we did a rib stitch a little differently this time. I'm showing on this video and another video how to do the different types of rib stitches and decreasing, and starting to make it easier when you're not working on the negative side. Makes it a lot easier to do decreasing on ribbing. So you can do this technique where you make the hood first and put it down, but we're back to our starting point. Now we're going to work our way back, and that'll be row 2. So you slip that first stitch, and then you start with a purl, because there's a purl. And how to keep up with that is if you look inside the loom and it looks like a single strip of knit inside, that is a purl, and if it looks like a purl, it is a knit on the positive side. But again, if you wanted to try the other pattern, the Hoodic, and you want to not have to worry about the negative side, and you want to decrease easy like this, you can go in and do the hood first, place it down, do your so many rows on, do it just like this with the hood first, then do the turtleneck, and then do all this like this processing. You can. It'll still work out the same. So this is our second row that we're working up, and then I will show you how to go in and decrease again with a 3rd row, and then I'm going to tell you to follow the pattern. I'm trying to also explain what the pattern is written out in those decreases so that it kind of makes a little bit more sense to understand what you're looking at. So there's your knits, always making sure to knit. There's your 2nd row. Now you want to do 1 more row, now remember, you can just take out the hood part of this entirely and just do, and I'm going to provide that pattern in the book that this is going to be published with. You can just get the the turtleneck part made without the hood at all, and you'll have a really nice Victorian collar. And so you can do the Hoodic without the hood, and you can do this one without the hood, and you will have a beautiful collar, or a dickie as they call it. I think the younger generations would probably sit there and laugh at that, but I know the traditional terminology for a turtleneck collar is a dickie. So you can, if you're in the old school, you can make a dickie out of either one of these patterns by removing the hood, or a collar. I've made both of the designs basing it off of the exact amount of rows done for the turtleneck area on both the Hoodic and this one, the Victorian lace. Alright, now we're ready to decrease. Now remember, you're landing on a knit, so you're going to knit the two together. See? So you've already decreased. You're going to knit the two together because you landed on a knit after you've slipped that first one. Then you'll knit and then go back into a purl. So remember that. If you land on a knit, knit the two together. If you land on a purl, purl the two together. If you forget, I don't think it's going to really show up that much, okay? So don't fret yourself about this. Okay, I'm going to finish up this row, and then I'm going to tell y'all to go and tackle the rest of it, okay? And you'll be wanting to decrease this down to 6 pegs. There's your last 3. Decrease, skip that first one, decrease over to the right. The arrow will show in the pattern. Then you're going to move that last stitch in one, and you don't have to, you can go ahead and knit the two together or whatnot. It's landed on a knit, so we're going to knit the two together. Knit the two together and then knit that last stitch. Okay. Now you're going to work back and forth, slipping those in ones whenever you start the row and making sure to knit them. But you're going to do 3 rows, and then you're going to decrease. And you're going to continue that 3 rows, decrease. And you'll do that until you're down to a total of 6 stitches, okay? Then you're going to do a bind off, and I'll show you how to do that. But go ahead and pause the video and get your decreasing down to where it needs to be. Okay, we have decreased it down to 6 stitches, and you'll see that nice chain that we've developed there by slipping and knitting that last stitch, which will make it easier to do our lace trim later on. So what you're going to do is you're going to decrease again, like we've been doing. So you're going to move that decrease in, you're going to knit the two together and move that slip over. Then you're going to knit 1, purl 1, and you're going to move it again. So you skip that first one, decrease to the right, and move your slip in 1. And you can do this in a thinner yarn if you choose to, for a lot less bulky look to it. Okay, so go ahead and knit those two together and knit the last one. Now you're just going to work your way over. like you normally would. Alright. Here's your bind off, so you're going to go ahead and start binding off. So I showed you the last decrease, and you're going to just do a really light bind off because this creates a chain, and you're going to need to be able to pull that chain up when you're doing the lace trim. So make sure that you don't do a super tight bind off, do a fairly loose one so that you can pull the chain up when you get to the bottom here and doing the lace trim, and that'll make it a lot easier. And last one. And I like to wrap it one more time, snip the end, pull through. Okay, so there you have your front with the nice rib stitch there going on. Okay, and now what we want to do is we want to go in and start working the back. So it's going to decrease faster than the front, but there's your front. That's what it looks like on the negative side. You have a chain over there. Alright, so now you have your back section here that you want to be working on. Okay, and I usually will just start with a slip knot as my first stitch when I'm adding yarn like this to another section. So I normally just do a slip stitch knot and put it on there and just knit it over, which you normally would be slipping that first peg, but knitting it, it'll be okay. So oops, okay, so knit and then knit and then purl. So yes, that first one would have been a purl, but we're knitting it, remember, because it's our end pegs. And on this one, it's every other row is going to be a decrease. So we're going to work our way over. To the other side. We're going to work our way back. So the first two rows, you don't do anything. Just kind of gets that fresh yarn worked in there. And then you start decreasing every other row. Okay, but to get started, you're going to do a normal row, back and forward and back. And make sure you knit that last stitch every time. You want a beautiful chain. Okay, we're working our way back, and this is going to be another regular row, no decreasing, so your work back is always a regular row. And we're starting off with a slip 1, purl, and knit 2. So you just kind of work your way back like you've been doing. Finish up the row and make sure to knit that last stitch. Okay, now we're going to decrease, and this is where we're going to decrease every other row. So go ahead and move that stitch over, and then move your slip. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be a knit 2 together. Then you're going to work your way around to the other side just before the last 3 stitches. Then you're going to decrease over, move that last stitch over, and then you're going to knit 2 together, and then knit the 1, because we're always knitting that last stitch. Then you're going to work your way back like a regular row with no decreasing involved. So slip that first stitch and start a knit, knit, purl, and then work your way around like a regular row, making sure to knit that last stitch. So we're working our way over to the other side, and we're going to be decreasing again, and this time we're going to be decreasing onto a purl. So slip that first stitch, decrease over, move your slip, MSL is move slip, and we landed on a purl, so we're going to end up purling two together. So purl two together, and then start working your way back to the other side to just before the last three stitches. Okay, we're before the last three stitches. We're going to decrease over, and if you want, you can go ahead and pick up that last stitch because this is a little tighter, and go ahead and place that last stitch onto the peg and then put your decrease stitch on. So this is kind of a variety of ways you can go about doing this, but these last stitches can be a little tighter to work with. And then go ahead and have your decrease right there and place it onto the peg. Okay, so we knit the two together because we didn't land on a purl, and then we're going to knit the last stitch. Okay, and then we're going to work our row back like normal with no decreasing, beginning to slip that first stitch, work your way around, decrease that on the next row, work your way around, decrease over here, knit regular, decrease every other row until you're down to your 6 pegs again, well actually 8, and then I'll show you how to go in and you decrease like you did on the front side, and you bind off and everything so that you're ready for the lace trimming that we're going to show next. So pause the video, get that much done, and then I'll show you the lace trim. We have completed most everything. We have our hood, we have our turtleneck, and now we have our finishing touch we need to do, and that means we're wanting to add lace around the edge. Okay, so what I like to do is start on one of my back corners like here or here. Okay, and I'm going to be picking up the chains because you'll have a chain, as you can see, all around the edge. Alright, and that's going to make it easier. If you've worked a 10 stitch, you can do this. Alright, so what I want to do is I want to add a chain stitch in. Okay, now I've got to figure out which side I want to start from. I think I'll start from this side. So, and we want to pull from this side, which is the positive side. So I'm going to find my corner, which is right here, and I'm going to place it down on the loom. Okay, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I believe it's 7 that I'm working with. Alright, so what I want to do is I want to E-wrap over Okay, and I'm going to toss that bottom loop over. Alright. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to knit my way back. I need to get started, so I'm going to knit my way over. Okay, then I'm going to slip that first stitch and purl my way back. This just gets you started. Alright. And once you get started, you're going to be doing a certain number of row repeat in order to do the lacing. And when you get just before the last, you're going to pick up your next one, which we're going up this way. You're going to pick up your next one, which is right there, and you're going to place it onto the loom. And remember which side is your positive side, okay? So this is our positive side. So what we want to do is we want to pick up from here, we want to place it on there, and then we're going to purl the 2 stitches together. Alright? We're always going to purl those 2 stitches together, okay? Whenever you're coming back, that's when you add a stitch on, alright? So what we want to do is we're going to decrease over 1. We're going to yarn over, knit 2 together. Then we're going to knit 1 and 2 and 3. Then we're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we're going to purl back 1, 2, wrap and turn, knit 2 and 3, slip and purl, and then purl 2 together, and then purl, and then purl the yarn over, add your next stitch back in, which is right here. So add the next chain and purl the 2 together. Okay, our next thing is we're going to knit that first stitch, then knit the second, then we're going to decrease over, yarn over, knit 2 together, then knit 1, then chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're going to slip that first one, you're going to purl back 2, wrap and turn, knit 3, and then slip, and then purl 2, and then purl 2 together, and purl 2, add a chain, which here's your next chain, and purl 2 together. And that is a set that we just did. I'm going to show you that set one more time. Okay, so we're going to slip on the ends whenever we're going back. Okay, so what you're going to slip that first one, you're going to decrease over 1, you're going to yarn over, you're going to knit the 2 stitches together, 1, 2, then you're going to knit to the end, so that's 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, actually you're going to knit over 3, and you're going to ear-up chain 4. Okay, sorry about that, it's late at night. I can do this. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so knit 3, purl, ear-up chain 4, slip that first one, purl 2, wrap and turn, knit 2 and 3, slip that first one, and then you're going to work your way back. So there's 1, 2, 3, knit 2 together, and then knit 2, 1, 2. Then you're going to pick up that next chain, place it onto the loom, and purl 2 together. Alright, and I consider that 2 rows, okay? And here's your next set, okay? And this is like the next 2 rows. You're going to knit 1 and 2 after you slip that first one. You're going to decrease over, yarn over, knit 2 together, knit 1, ear-up chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're going to slip that first stitch, and you're going to purl back 2. You're going to wrap and turn. You're going to knit 3, 1, 2, 3. You're going to slip that first one, purl 2, 1, 2. Then you're going to purl 2 together, and then purl 2, and then you're going to pull up a chain and put it on the peg, and you're going to purl 2 together. Alright, and that is your next 2 rows. So you're going to keep that repeat going until you've just done the chains. And normally I would say you need to do a corner, but that's not the case because you're really already kind of doing an expansion right through here. Okay, so you can kind of see what we're doing here. Right, so you're doing an expansion, so you don't need to do a corner piece like you normally would. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're just going to continue adding chains all the way around. Now you won't have a chain through here, but you'll pick up through the connectors. You'll pick up this connector here as a chain. Alright, so you're going to count that as a chain, and you're going to work your way around here where your cast off, your bind off is on that chain, and work your way around, and you're just going to repeat this all the way around. And then what you're going to do is you're going to bind off and sew the 2 ends together, your cast on and your bind off area together, and then you're done. So that is how you make a Victorian lace hoodic, as I'll call it. Alright, so you continue doing those last 4 rows when you go all the way over, and you do some short rows here, and then you go all the way back. That's 2 rows. And then when you go over, and then you do some short rows here, and then you go back, that's 2 more rows. So it's a 4-row repeat, and you'll see that when I do the write-up. And the write-up will be in the box below if you want it. But if you can follow the video and you don't feel like you need it, you can. If you've got the general idea. But the write-up is below, and that is how you make a Victorian lace hoodic.